Hi, everyone. Welcome to another shared episode between No Nonsense Spirituality and Bill Reel of the Almost Awakened podcast. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing exceptionally well, Britt. Good to see you.
I've been looking forward to this episode, probably even more than our guests, even though I love the guests that we've had, and we have a couple guests coming up. I've been very excited. When I saw this episode, I knew that I wanted to talk to you about this show, and I binged it in like 2 days. And so we're very excited. Yeah, very unhealthy. I can sometimes get a very addictive personality. And so we're very excited today to talk about the show Pluribus. So if you have not seen Pluribus yet and don't want any spoilers, because I think we'll have some, like we're going to talk about the whole show. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want any spoilers, press pause, spend the next 10 hours binging like the 9 or 10 episodes, whatever it is, and then come back to this. And today we're going to discuss Pluribus, which is a science fiction drama created by Vince Gilligan, who is known for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Did you watch either of those shows?
I did watch Breaking Bad. I never saw Better Call Saul.
I liked Better Call Saul even more than Breaking Bad, but I liked Breaking Bad. Both good shows too. And the series centers around Carol Sturka, played by Ray Seahorn. Is that how you say her name, Ray?
That sounds right.
Okay. And she's a novelist, a kind of grumpy novelist who finds herself as one of a tiny handful of humans immune to a mysterious event called the Joining, where an alien virus transforms all of humanity into this kind of peaceful, telepathic hive mind known as the Others. And she's one of, I think, 12 who doesn't tap into the hive mind. And it just brought up so many interesting philosophical rabbit holes. So first question, just kind of overall the show without digging in too much. What did you like and dislike about the show overall?
Yeah. So first off, I'll just say I would not have watched this had you not recommended it. And, but taking it in, Teresa and I sat down, my girlfriend Teresa and I sat down, we watched all the episodes and we really enjoyed it. I thought it was a ton of fun for season 1. I think it's an interesting concept. I think there are lots of little ideas to play with that I think we'll get into today. But I was quite interested from episode to episode. I looked forward to watching the very next one. And when it came to an end, I found myself excited to see when season 2 comes out and what that involves.
How did you like the character of Carol? Because she's kind of like I'm split on her, because on the one hand, I really like that she's a complex female character and that she's not always likable, because it's so hard as women, like so often we have to play or even just be likable characters. And so I kind of liked that she was complex enough that sometimes you didn't like her, or sometimes she was being annoying, or she was being a little bitch sometimes. But I like that because then she's like a person, And so I do so sometimes I was annoyed by her, but I liked that I was being annoyed by her because she was complex and human. What do you think about her as like the character of her?
Yeah, one of the things I started to bring up with you, and we'll get into this later and talk about it at length, but as we're playing with ideas of what would society be like if it looked like this, you have this character who's non-traditional. You would think in this kind of story, you would need someone who just loves experiencing their human life, and there are parts of her that just seems like she's always grumpy or always negative. And to juxtapose that with the rest of society who she wants to fix, who are happy and enthralled with this new setup. It's an interesting juxtaposition. I wonder, again, who am I to challenge the writers and the folks who produce this? But I wonder if you almost needed the opposite, right? Like she's the one who's thrilled and happy, and it's the rest of society who you can see the flaws and shortcomings, but that's not it. You see the flaws and shortcomings in Carol, and you see this society that seems to operate in an altruistic way, that seemed to be thrilled with life, and yet she wants to bring the whole damn thing down.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So let's go to our first question here, which is just the big question that I even asked my girlfriends, or I've asked anyone who's watched the show. I've asked this question, which is, if you're her, do you opt in? Do you be like the guy in Vegas who's like playing James Bond? Do you just go live in a cabin by yourself and just read books till you die? What do you do, Bill Reel?
Yeah, we talked about this last episode. I'm a little bit of a hedonist.
More than me, but
yeah,
you're also much more in your body than I am, just in general.
Yeah, and I've had other people say that. Teresa and I were having a conversation the one day, and she's like, "You're so much more present in your body, so much more comfortable with what you're feeling, and being willing to sort of name what it is you want that to look like." I'll just say I wrote the guy's name down. I should have had it here, but do you remember the gentleman's name that's in Vegas?
No.
But
we'll call him Vegas guy.
Yeah, I'll call him Vegas guy. His life is how I would live. I mean, again, in this show, there's only 13, maybe 17, something like that, people who aren't affected by this Hive virus. And they're scattered all across the globe. And so it's not like you get to hang out with them, because that would be my first choice, is to find one of them and make some sort of like, hey, like, we'll enjoy this world, but let me at least have one person who's experiencing the world the way I experience it. But you're not. You're alone. You're on your own. And if you have any family, they're part of this Hive virus mind. And so do I want to live like her, where I'm grumpy and miserable? No. Do I want to sit in a room by myself and read books? No. You get one life to live. I'm not affected by the Hive mind. I don't want to be like them. I'm going to go and have as much fun as possible. I saw him.
How quick would you get bored? Like, knowing that they're playing with you?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
Stay in the role. Don't you dare come out unless you have to.
Yeah.
But
then eventually you almost forget that they're part of the Hive mind, and it's just life. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like knowing that they're play acting in that way would bother me. Like the truthiness of that would bother me. So I thought about this a lot, and this is really my favorite thing about the show. The reason that I love this show so much is that it's forcing me to explain why autonomy is good. Because we talk about autonomy, you more than me talk on your show about things like autonomy and consent all the time as human values. But the show is like forcing you to rationalize why those are values, because people in the Hive mind give up their autonomy and they're happier. The woman who was out of the Hive mind and then joined later says she's happier. She's at peace. Suffering goes down. It's communal. It's not authoritarian. So in that environment, why is autonomy good, even though like our instinct is that it is good? And so what I loved about the show is that it's a great example of a philosophy called emotivism, which is more popular now because Alex O'Connor is an emotivist and he's an advocate for that. Where it's the argument that our morals are really not rational. They come from our emotions. And so emotionally, it kind of felt like joining the Hive was wrong, or that you don't want to do it. But rationally, I was having a really hard time justifying why, especially because there's such a massive reduction in suffering. And so what I think I would do, I think I would spend a few years outside the Hive, and I would like host discussions, like almost like a podcast, which is so much more boring than your like Vegas life where you're just living it up. But I would have like, you know, and some of the bodies may not be there, but at least the minds, and like Jesus versus Muhammad today. And then I'm going to talk to Christopher Hitchens and Socrates and Diogenes. And I'm just going to have all these interesting conversations, like your ultimate dinner party every day with the most interesting people, and have them debate each other and talk to each other. And I could do that for years. For years, I would do like the most interesting dinner parties with like any interesting human that I could possibly think of, and like access their minds, you know, through the Hive mind or whatever. And that would be very fun for me. But I do think that I would get bored, which is not great for me mentally. And then I do think I would be curious about the Hive mind. And then I think eventually I would rationally come to a place where like I suffer by nature, I think, more than you. And I would agree that the reduction of suffering matters more than holding on to autonomy. And I think I would plug in after a few years after I got bored. I think that's what I would do.
So these interviews that you're going to have, I mean, again, folks have to watch the show to understand this, but you're really not, I mean, even if you talk to that person, you're not really talking to that person. It's really more of the entire world population is sharing with you the information that was in that person's head. But you're not getting their inflection or their tone or their uniquely shaped life experience. You're just getting a download of the story that person has.
That, I think that would feel real enough. Like if it was someone's body and they downloaded the brain into that body and they're talking as if that person would, how that person would talk, and you have access to every thought that they've ever had, I think it would feel real enough that I would forget and I would feel like I was talking to that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In autonomy, I mean, do you want to dig into like why autonomy is important here?
Yeah, because why is it?
Yeah. There's something special. Depressed, happy, challenges, not. There's something special about like this uniqueness that I brought into the world, or you brought into the world, and it makes it all random, and it makes it all not orchestrated. And when I watch this community that's thrilled, they're so happy. And there's a part of me that goes, I would want to be that happy. I would want to just jump into the Hive right now just to experience that. But once you do, there's no coming back to you. I would go practically my entire life. There may come a point where like, okay, I'm sick. I've got 6 months to live.
You want to tap out. Yeah.
That feels like to be that hive mind, but I'm gonna stick with my autonomy, hang out with bright, again, everybody's going to be bright in this sense, but sit down with people who can give you cool information. I would want storytellers as well, Britt. But I'd also want to sit in the hot tub with the hot chicks while the storytellers tell the stories. So,
okay. So this goes into a question I wanted to ask you, because it brings in something really interesting about heaven. And you and I come from Western religious tradition, where our concept of heaven that we grew up, you know, you were a convert, but that we at least spent our adult life believing in, that you were like we're in heaven and you're all together, but you're still an individual. Like you don't lose your individuality. And so I think another thing that is interesting to explore is that heaven in Eastern thought, and I'm using the term heaven like very loosely, really just afterlife here. Often you do actually lose your individuality. And so is your like clinging to like, I'm a person and my uniqueness matters, is that something uniquely Western? Because like in Advaita Vedanta, ultimate reality is not non-dual, which means the individual self is an illusion, and the enlightenment comes from realizing that you're just part of the hive mind. You're a part of unified consciousness. There's strands of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, where you also like completely have dissolution of the self, liberation from suffering. Even some Taoist strands can have some of this. And so Pluribus is kind of raising this question of like an afterlife where you really are a part of one and you lose your individuality. Is that heaven or hell? Like, is that something that we want? And is that something that humans want? Because my guess is that humans want something adjacent to this, like what you were talking about. Like they want to be understood, they want to be part of a community, they want to stop suffering. But I don't think most humans, or at least most, like especially the ego part of our brain that feels like a self, it doesn't want to disappear. But then is that something that Eastern religion really reveals? Like if you believe that the ego is just a shortcut of your brain and it's an illusion, then why wouldn't this kind of more Eastern concept of heaven and oneness be something that you would want? Thoughts there?
Yeah. So starting back with the TV show, it's obvious that if or when I ever did choose to be absorbed back into that, to be absorbed into that hive mind, the show tells you you're going to be happy. You're going to be content. You're going to be grateful that you did it. So I can't sit and make an argument about like, I don't know if I'd be like you would. And then even in, like, forget religion, even in this space that we sometimes have conversations as spiritual atheists, and we talk about the creative energy of the universe, and maybe, you know, maybe consciousness is fundamental to the universe. We talked about that in a few episodes ago. And if I die and my unique creative piece of the creative energy that's in me goes back into the greater creative energy, and if I tell a positive story about that's how the consciousness works, and now that creative energy, that consciousness now knows the life experience that you had, but now you're part of some bigger thing. And the idea of that isn't, I don't know how to explain this, but the idea of that isn't sad. It's not like, oh, I would be sad when I go back.
Right.
That I'm sad right now going like, oh, I'm part of some other big thing that's all of us. And so the unique piece that's me ceases to be. Kind of.
But like Eastern religious strands would be like, well, then you haven't killed your ego enough, and you haven't seen the illusion of ego enough. And they would kind of chastise you for your clinging to this facade that is Bill Reel, right?
Yeah, I think Eckhart Tolle is a lot more boring and unhappy in his head than I am. And I'm not going to apologize for that. So when he sits and says, you know, you got to get rid of that and the power of now, and I think there's something more interesting about holding on to a little bit of ego.
Let me ask you about free will, because this is one where I think a discussion between you and me is going to be different than kind of the national discussion, or I don't know if it's an international show, about free will. Because one thing that I've heard in listening to people is they have this sense that Carol has free will. Everybody in the hive mind, there's no really concept of free will. You're just kind of part of the hive mind. But you and me already don't believe that we have free will. So the hive mind people don't have free will. But you and I would be, I think, more likely to say that Carol also doesn't have free will. And so if everybody doesn't have free will and hive mind conditions lead to less suffering, then is it objectively better because Carol also doesn't have free will? She's just clinging to the illusion of free will.
Yeah, what do they say? Just the belief that you have free will leads to more people being happy than they would if they didn't believe it, whether it's there or not. And so, no, I don't think I have free will. I'm not, again, we talk about this stuff like the science says that 300 milliseconds before you make a decision, it shows up somewhere in your subconscious or in your mind that isn't a conscious thought. And so you don't have free will, but as you point out, they certainly don't. The difference is that you're collectively, again, not choosing, not making a decision as free will is defined, but you're collectively making a decision instead of individually making a decision. I don't think there's a difference, but the collective decision has the awareness of everyone. The collective decision is making a decision based on like what is good for all of us in this moment. And if Britt Hartley in the hive mind listens to Bill Reel in the hot tub having a podcast with the Vegas guy and a bunch of hot chicks, the moment you hear me say the thing, everyone else in the hive also has heard that podcast, right? Everyone else has heard that conversation. And so you're collectively deciding what to do, how to move forward. I still think there's something valuable about you.
But why? Like, okay, so here, my argument would be, and I'm agnostic to this thing, but I'm playing with you a little bit. My argument would be that, like you said, nobody has free will, so it's not like one side has free will and one side doesn't. But the hive mind is, because they're aware of everyone all at once, they are acting in a way that leads to a reduction in suffering and everybody's happy. Whereas Carol, like when she has a tantrum with her lack of free will over here, people suffer and people die. and she's suffering, and so could you then objectively say, since no one has free will and the hive mind is awareness of all, and Carol is selfish with her, with her lack of free will over here, but she acts selfishly in ways that causes objective harm, then can you say that the hive mind is objectively better and more moral?
Yeah, I sit and watch Carol have her temper tantrums, and I'm like, I don't get you. I'm not prone to temper tantrums. So it's one thing, right? We live in a planet of 8 billion people, and lots of those humans are doing intentional harm. And again, they don't have free will either. The sociopath, the narcissist, the serial killer, the child abuser, those people aren't making active choices in the way we would define it. They're genetically prone to doing things or whatever it is. But the thing you're posing to me is like, everyone else is in the hive mind. I'm just on the outside of it. I'm not prone to temper tantrums. And I still say there's
so you're thinking it as you, like you could do it in a way that's moral, even though Carol gets out of control sometimes and causes harm.
If the entire planet either has to be in the hive mind or out, man, I'm having this internal debate. Like, do I reduce the amount of suffering on this planet? But then we have to have a conversation about, if you put everybody in a hive mind and there's not any uniqueness, and if there isn't, then going forward from that point forward, there's certain things that you're going to miss out on because you're all thinking alike, because you're all making a collective good decision. There's certain kinds of progress you might not experience by running into the walls that some of us do. Like, you really do need people who blaze trails. You really do need people who take on challenges, even if that constantly ends with disappointment or bumping into something, in order to sort of figure out the way through. And I think that hive mind might reduce some degree of creativity. And so then I go like, okay, do we reduce the suffering, but we reduce our progress too, perhaps? And then we also have to get into, again, we also have to get into a conversation that these people are living life in such a way that they're going to run out of food. They're going to starve to death. They're going to die. And that's going to be an amount of suffering that they're sort of putting off to not have it now. And
let's go. Let's go to the creativity one, because this was one of your questions that I think we should spend more time on. That there is, it seems to be that there's a lack of creativity when you have like, you don't ever see them like sitting around painting. I don't even really know what they do when Carol's not around. Like, do we even have really a sense of what they're doing? But they don't seem to be creating. And so somehow, without the uniqueness and without the struggle, there's a loss of art, right? There's a clear loss of art in this society, and that's a great loss. And so the question, and I think our personalities are going to differ here, the question is like, does the removal of suffering, like no more grape, no more abuse, nobody, except for when Carol has a tantrum, none of that happening, is the removal of suffering worth the loss of art? Because is the art there to help us get through the harshness of reality? But if you're happy and everything's fine, do you actually need the art? Because the art, Nietzsche has this line that's like, we do art, something like this. We do art lest we die from the truth, something like that. And it's like the art is the thing that gets us through how harsh reality is. It's how we connect to others. It's how we express. But if you're just happy and life is fine, this is why like tortured artists create the best art. Like, happy people don't create great art. So for you, like, it's such a loss that there's loss of creativity and loss of art. And for me, as someone who I think is more neurotic and suffers more and is very just sensitive to suffering, I'm willing to let go of the art for the reduction of suffering. And I think you're less like that. Less likely to do that.
Yeah, we're all actors, actresses on the stage. This is a play. And there are horrific things. At some point, I think there's a conversation to be had about this whole Guthrie thing happening, where Nancy Guthrie gets kidnapped out of her home or worse. Um, there are horrific things that happen on planet Earth every day, immense amounts of suffering. And there's so much mystery in this world too. And where do humans go? Do we end up annihilating each other and going back to something more primitive? Do we end up building rockets and going out into space and begin to inhabit things like places like Mars? I kind of crave the mystery of all of that. And I don't think you can have the mystery without the suffering. I don't think you can have the creativity without the suffering. And so, as you point out, there's something boring about the way they're living, even though they're happy. And I just don't want to participate in that.
I think some of it, I just remembered that you are an Enneagram 8, if I remember right. And so a lot of your like identity or motivation like requires a little bit of pushing, right? Like you like almost like the struggle of pushing for something that's right or pushing against things that are wrong. Or eights, like healthy eights are the people that you most want, like on the front lines, even sometimes being a little aggressive, like for the vulnerable, for the people who can't do that for themselves. Like they make excellent, like civil rights attorneys and things like that. So I wonder if there's something about like your base motivation and being an Enneagram 8 that without that kind of tension, you just kind of are like, well, what's the point? And like, who am I in this? And I wonder if that speaks more to just like kind of your base motivation there that would be different for different people.
You have expressed that nihilism and some state of depression is sort of second nature to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never experienced depression beyond maybe a few days here or there. I bet I've experienced what I would call depression less than 2 weeks in my life.
Mm.
And I've never gone through what I would call nihilism. And I deeply think it's that. I think what's kept me from experiencing those is confrontation. Some sort of, like you say, bumping
like
up
the
against
joy of the tension, like the joy of the struggle and who you become in that struggle.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what's
there is something like it's a core, like it's the core motivating drive for you. And the hive mind does lose that. So for me, when I see the hive mind where everyone's happy, like, oh my gosh, it's such a reduction of suffering. And for people who are Enneagram people, and this is a different tangent, we've talked about it before on the Almost Awakened podcast. If you want to check out on our episode on Enneagrams. We did a really interesting episode years ago on how each Enneagram deconstructs religion, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. So check out that old episode. But I'm an Enneagram 4, and Enneagram 4s are very like Kurt Cobain is an Enneagram 4, like very like some of our best art, best philosophy, best literature, lots of suicidality, lots of addiction, slow suicide. And it's just like it's a tortured way of being. Excuse my voice. It's a tortured way of being sometimes, but there's gifts. All Enneagram numbers have gifts, and so for me, yeah, like this concept of a hive mind and everyone being happy feels like a vacation for me, but that just feels absolutely meaningless to your personality type who enjoys tension, because there's no tension in the hive mind.
what is a life for a justice warrior if there is no inequality?
Right. That almost feels like that's taking something from you much more than it's taking something from me. And it's like, okay, there's less art, but like the reason I create art is because I'm this like tortured mind and I need some expression for it. And so if I'm not suffering as much, then maybe I don't need to like write as much because I don't need to write my suffering. And so that feels more like, yeah, that's less threatening to my identity than I feel like it is for you. I didn't even think about that when we were writing these notes, but I do think our Enneagram differences, like our core motivation differences, are showing up here in interesting ways.
Yeah, I'll add, I get, if I join the hive mind in Pluribus, I'm happy. And then I sit and watch the show and I go, yeah, but like who I am is dependent on sort of the struggle of life and the inequality that's out there and the challenge of trying to shine a light on intentional unhealthiness in systems and in others. And then I go like, okay, so I would be happy, but I don't get how I would be happy because I would see me, and that feels depressing.
So then for you, does it feel like the hive mind is more of an illusion because you know the Bill Reel as you are wouldn't be happy in this world without tension and something to fight for? So then it almost feels like plugging into a matrix and plugging into an illusion? Is it more like that for you? Because you know that you actually, like, you believe them that they're happy, but it's almost like it's an illusion. And then that goes back to all of our many discussions about like how sometimes people are happier in an illusion, and you don't want that. And I don't want that, but it's almost like for you, there's something there where you know that Bill Reel wouldn't like it. So whatever they're feeling is an illusion, and you don't want to play in their illusion, even if it would make you happier.
Yeah, whoever that is, once I join, I'm not Bill Reel anymore. And whoever that person is, they're happy, they're enjoying it, but they don't feel the way I feel. They're not experiencing life the way I experience it. They don't perceive handing someone an atom bomb the way I would perceive handing someone an atom bomb, right? Like in the show, Carol's like, you'd give me a nuclear weapon, and they're like, well, we don't know what you would do with it, but yeah, we'd give it to you. And I'm like, the hell you would. Like, you're sort of ending your own. There are parts of the show that make no sense to me, which is part of why it was entertaining and enjoyable to watch, because it forces you to confront things that don't quite make sense. But as you're pointing out, as I watched it, I can't make sense of why I would be happy. It doesn't fit for me. And I can't make sense of why she's grumpy. Like, I know she lost a person, but she was grumpy before she lost a person. She's at this really cool, early on in the show, she's at this really cool, she's having this flashback memory of spending time with her girlfriend or wife, and they're at this ice castle. It's you go on Airbnb and you reserve like this really cool experience. And so her partner pays for the two of them to go to this like ice castle, and they're going to sleep on a block of ice. They're going to walk around all these frosted hallways, and everything's made of ice. And it's just a cool experience. And I thought, man, wouldn't that be such a fun, cool night? And here's Carol before anything bad has happened in the show, and she's just pissing and moaning about her life and moaning about this really cool experience. And I go, I can't understand Carol either. And so there's this juxtaposition of this main character I can't comprehend, juxtaposed up against this society I can't comprehend. And I'm wanting them to be miserable, and I'm wanting her to be happy. And it's butting heads because nothing is the way I think it would be.
Yeah, that's like bizarro world for you.
Yeah.
It goes back. There's one study that I saw that I think has some relevance here, which is we've asked people questions ever since the Matrix, really, and Inception and Truman Show and all these kinds of shows. There's one study that I'm remembering where we asked people if you could plug into a very real feeling VR of life, where you have the most amazing career and the most amazing partner, and your kids never get cancer, and it feel like once you plug in, like you feel like it's real, would you plug in? And there was a correlation between, if you're depressed, you're more likely to plug in. And if you're not depressed, you're more likely to stay in whatever is reality, even though it has a lot of ups and downs. And there was a correlation there. So that might be another thing that's happening where I may be like, especially after a while, I would have a few years for sure where I would just kind of play around. But eventually, I feel like, yeah, that depression and that inner suffering would almost make me just want to plug in, because I would trust that I would be happier and that would feel better. One of my bad days, I would just say F it all and I would just plug in. But for someone who doesn't experience depression as much, then you're less likely to make that move. And we actually have some hard data on that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I love to play a little bit of video games. And you have this moment where you share this consciousness and you have a life, and it strikes me that when people plug into a simulation, they are enjoying themselves. And we criticize that because we attribute that life should have some other sort of meaning than just to pass the time away, enjoying yourself, rather than being outside of whatever that fun thing is. Doom scrolling on your phone, playing a video game, doing VR, going to a casino, whatever it is. Like, you pick a thing and it's just fun and it passes the time away. And people go like, well, you shouldn't gamble because, it's going to cost you money and you're going to have an addiction. And there's a million ways to pass life away. And who the hell cares what that is? Why does it need to be invested in whatever that person or that group of people doing the research say that it should be invested in? And so, and I only stammer here because, yeah, you have to have conversations about what is suffering for others, what is suffering to yourself. It reminds me of like the seatbelt law. Yes, everyone else in your car should wear a seatbelt, but everybody should be, and other than children, every adult should be responsible for themselves. And if they don't want to wear a seatbelt and they want to get ejected out of the car and fly 70 feet in the air and die, then they should be able to do that without getting a ticket and being pulled over and having to pay $200 for not wearing a seatbelt. It's the same thing. People should get the right to choose how they live their life, so long as they are not causing intentional harm and suffering to others. And
I think there's also like unintentional harm. Like, my husband was a paramedic for a while, and he definitely didn't consent to, the guy who didn't wear his seatbelt. He didn't consent that day to pick that guy's brains up off of the pavement, in ways that make him come home a little bit more affected and not be as present with his wife and that kind of thing, And so we're so interconnected that sometimes we also have to watch for harm. But the thing that I do agree with you on is that it did take me a long time, especially as a woman post-Mormonism, to separate out not just like the purity culture from religion, which took some time, where like pleasure is bad and your body is to be distrusted. That took me a long time to deconstruct. And then after that, it's like even just being in society and this kind of whole, because like we come from Puritan Christianity, which is a very specific form of Christianity, where there is this kind of distrust of pleasure and you have to hustle to earn it. Like, did you work all day? Then you get to earn self-care, instead of just saying like, you're going to die. Like, what do you enjoy doing? Do that thing, It took me a long time to deconstruct those things and have it not go so far to the other end where you're just doing numbing behaviors, which then is also, I think, a lesser way to live too, where you're just numbing yourself out the whole time, and find that sweet spot where it's like, I'm not numbing out, but I'm definitely like prioritizing the pleasures of life and like what makes you happy and what is enjoyable for you. That took me a long time to do all of that deconstruction.
Okay, so two things. One, if you go back to your husband as the paramedic and you go, yeah, the person who died in the car accident caused your husband to come home with trauma and harm done to him on some level that's unintentional. But think about all the things that aren't illegal. People can yell at their kids all day long and no one's going to jail. And we let people do a lot of things that cause other people harm, for which we feel like, oh, it's not, there's no, I get it in my head. I'm judging it as not allowed. It's wrong, but I'm not going to intervene. I'm not going to do something about it. People have the right to live their life a certain way. And
people, I think, have a right, both of us would agree, people have a right to take a mushroom that the earth creates and eat it. Like, people should have that right too.
Why is numbing out over the course of a lifetime in your mind so bad? And then I just want to throw out an example. Somebody who is extremely wealthy and they spend their time on a yacht with a drink in their hand. They spend their time finding fun ways to just pass the time by. And next thing you know, they're 80 years old and death is just around the corner. And all they've done is used this resource to just escape the suffering of life and spend their time passing it by with as much enjoyment as possible. Like, why is extreme numbing to you the wrong way to live?
Yeah, that's a good question. And now we're gonna go somewhere else here. There's some ethics of wealth there that is a concern that people suffer so that you can sit around and do whatever you want. And I do think that a just society, we have to mitigate how much good luck and bad luck affects you in life. So there's some of that. There's ethics around that level of wealth. And then there's also that life inevitably will be some suffering somewhere. Someone you love will die. Someone you love will get sick. You're going to have a bad day. It is guaranteed. And I do think there's something about you need enough meaning, and I think we can know this psychologically, that you need enough meaning to combat the level of suffering that you have. And the more you suffer, the more you have to intentionally create meaning and feel like your life is meaningful. And I do think for most people, just kind of sitting around all day, there's some unethical, maybe concerns with wealth for that, that you're by numbing kind of the suffering, you're also numbing the joy too. And I don't think that you can do one without the other. I don't think you can numb the pain in this world and also experience the highest joys. Some of my highest joys are sitting with a client, for example, and they're in nihilism and they've talked to no one about this and they feel like no one understands them. And they break down and weep because in this hour that we have together, they feel so intimately seen and they feel hope that they feel for the first time in years. And that is an incredible feeling to know that you were a part of that and that you could offer a human that. And it feels amazing. It feels so good. And I get so much meaning in my life by knowing I could be that for someone else because I needed that person when I was going through that. It's inherently meaningful. But that moment wouldn't have come without intense suffering. You have to have both. And so if I numbed out all of my nihilism rabbit holes and all the dark philosophy I read and all of the bullshit and the deconstructing religion and getting kicked out of my family and getting kicked out of my home, then I would have, if I numbed out of all of that, I would have also lost everything that feels inherently meaningful. And I feel like that is, I don't think it's morally wrong in the sense that, like, I don't think there's objective morality. I don't think the universe cares. Like, so it's not a moral issue for me. It's more so that, like, by numbing all the bad, you missed out on some incredible good that I don't think you can have one without the other.
Doesn't Pluribus take that all away from you?
Yeah, Pluribus does take that away. But but then it becomes the question of, if you have that feeling all the time of that happiness that I feel when I know I've done something inherently meaningful, if you're just that, I know I can't get that without the bad, but if I could, then would you? Then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take the most meaningful, happy, connected life with no bad? I don't know. There's going to be days where I would be tempted enough that one day I would just do it because I would say, fuck it. I just know my personality that I would do that one day. Because I get the fuck it's pretty bad.
I don't know what to say to that. The show, it has certain human things going on that are in tension with each other, where you can play out a scenario so far down one track, like, okay, they're happy, but they lack creativity. And so you have to go, like, what is the value of being angry sometimes? What is the value? And there still is suffering. We should acknowledge to the audience, people still get sick. People still die. People still die of natural causes. People still die because, weird things happen, accidents happen. And the person who's dying, they're still feeling pain. They're still experiencing the process of death. So it's not like all of that is just taken off of planet Earth. But if you're not allowed to experience anger or creativity or suffering, like, I think those mean things too. And I think it's not just being human. It's the very first forms of life. There has been no form of life that I can think of that hasn't experienced suffering. And I wonder.
But does that start turning into Christian apologetics? Like, does that turn into every conversation that I have about the problem of evil with a Christian apologist will start to talk about that in that way where it's like, yes, there's suffering. Yes, it's hard, but XYZ. We couldn't get these certain attributes or these certain experiences, or you can't have bravery without something to be brave for. And so Christian apologists will say, like, all this suffering is to bring about our good. And my argument is always like, there is more unnecessary suffering than the suffering is becoming good. Like, I understand some suffering turns coal into diamonds, and that's a reality and whatever. But there's a lot of suffering that's just fucking suffering. And I'm afraid of like going too far down that line, not because there isn't something there, but because when I start sounding like a Christian apologist, I like kind of freak out. Like I kind of like, oh, wait, a Christian apologist would say that to me about the problem of suffering. I don't think that we can say that like all of this suffering is for good, because I think for me, the amount and out like there's other people, other atheists that are the same way, the sheer amount of suffering to me, like especially when I was wrestling with my belief in God, could in no way represent a good God behind it. It was just, it was too overwhelming. I could never really make sense of it. And so if we say in this world that like suffering is good because we get art and we get bravery and we get social justice warriors and we get all this, then is that the same argument that religions are making for God?
Yeah. If we're held to the structures of the TV show Pluribus, I think suffering on a mass scale across planet Earth is worth the potential to keep seeing what happens. Because the show is acknowledged, with all of us having hive mind, we're dying in 120 years, whatever it is. There's a timeline. Everybody comes to an end because they run out of resources. They don't have food anymore. In fact, they're powderizing themselves when they die. By the way,
they can't reproduce, like they can't bang it out. There's no children.
Yeah, I don't know that. What I know is that they've acknowledged that there is a deadline on the running out of resources, because they won't pick an apple off the tree and they won't harm an animal. They are limited. By the way, this is a zombie apocalypse TV show. Do you know that?
Yeah.
That these are zombies in a different sense of the word.
They're happy zombies. And so now we're more conflicted.
They eat people.
Yeah.
And they are determined, like that's what they have to do. They eat people, but there's a different mindset. But they're extinguishing. They're a species on the decline, and they will die out with happiness, but each person will come to an untimely death and the species will end. There's something worth the struggle to just for the chance that something really cool happens in the future. With this species, it seems like something cool is happening right now, but that something cool comes to an end. The other route,
and then they have to expand, right? So then there's something non-consensual about that, because now they have to go to other planets to sustain their life and zombie them.
And they're not, though. But yes, whatever species gave it to these people, yes. And these earthlings who are in this hive mind seem to have no desire to go to the moon or to go to Mars or to see what's out there in space. They are content busying their lives around taking care of each other in a communal way that seems to be abstract of devoting time to progress and doing something more. And I'm not sure by the time we get to season 6 or 7, my hunch is that Carol will be proven right. There's something better, because otherwise she just gets assimilated in the show.
Yeah, it can't be a show if it's hive mind. That's a boring show. So in order for the show to continue, she's got to start undoing people and getting people out.
What do you think of this? I'm going to say crazy guy. He may not be crazy, but he seems crazy. The crazy guy at the end he's just like, I'm going to walk through the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah. I love that guy. I love that guy because I admire the stubbornness in holding to your own values. Like I admire people who are like, no matter what's going on, even if it's easier, like these are my values here. And his thing is like, I'm not taking shit from these people. And I admire that. There's some virtue there that I see in him, even if he's wrong. Like regardless of if he's right or wrong, I have immense kind of hero worship to people who just live according to their values.
Yeah, I should say, just to folks who have not seen the TV show and have no intent, if you have an intention of watching this, we're already giving you spoilers. You should have stopped and watched the show before you listened. But for those who go, I'm just never going to watch the show and I don't understand what you're talking about, there is a character who lives on the other side of the planet, and he is the only other person besides Carol who seems even to any degree, and he's to a significant degree, but to any degree interested in putting things back the way they are. The show, when it first focuses on him, he is eating dog food at the expense of eating beautiful meals that this community of humans are making for him because he does not trust them. And
I also think like looking at his mom and saying, you're not my mother. Like that's a big move. Like you had to look at her face to say that.
And she's not his mother. She's not his mother any more than the next stranger down the road.
Yeah.
Because that stranger knows everything his mother knows in the same way that his mother knows it.
Yeah, but it would be hard to look into my dad's eyes and say that. Like that would still be emotionally difficult, I think.
Yeah. So this guy ends up making his way all across planet Earth to get to Carol with the goal that, you know, I don't want this world either. So let's go to work. Let's figure out how we put this thing back the way it was. And it feels, again, no one knows where a show goes until it goes there, but it feels as though the entire premise of this show is, did you ever watch, I forget what it was called. Maybe it's called like 11 Jurors. It's basically, there's this crime case. I think it's a murder case. There's an old movie and a modern rendition of it. I think it's based on a book too. 7 Angry Men, maybe that's what it is.
12 Angry Men.
Angry Men.
Yeah.
And there's one juror who feels one way.
Yeah.
And everybody's the other way. And by the end of the show, he's convinced everybody that they should all side the way he does. This feels like that we're going to show.
It has to be, because there's no show otherwise, right? And so I just looked up while you were talking. There is season 2 coming. It's already been ordered. And it will come out late 2027, early 2028. But yeah, something like that's got to start happening.
And when it does, it will demonstrate that in this conversation that you and I are having, that I'm actually right.
You may be, because my nihilism and my depression and my Enneagram number, they're definitely showing up in ways that differ. Even earlier on when you were just talking about how there's just so much value in the struggle. And, you know, would you want life to continue like how it is, even though there's so much suffering? Because you have a lot of just curiosity and desire to push towards what it could be. And I just get a little bit more hopeless as far as like, there just seems to be things about human nature that we can't override that cause increased suffering. And I really struggle with, this is where I wanted to go. A big thing with nihilists is this thought experiment of the big red button, that if you could push a big red button that ended all human life, could you say that that is the right thing to do or objectively moral thing to do, because it's such a vast reduction in suffering? There's no one to mourn. The animals tend to suffer less than humans, not because they're not violent. They certainly can be, but they don't suffer in the ways that human brains anticipate negative things all the time. And we just, like, our default state seems to be a lot of unnecessary suffering. And so like nihilists, I've read on Reddit threads and podcasts about this. I mean, people will rack their brains for years over whether it's the right thing to do to push the red button. And there's a little bit of that going on, whereas like you have the personality of like, yes, I know that it's wrong, but like, let's push towards something better and let's at least try. And me, sometimes I struggle. Like there's been times where if I had the big red button, there's been some dark nihilistic periods where like I would have pushed it and felt like it was the right thing to do. And then there's times where I'm doing better and I feel like maybe I wouldn't, but some of that is happening too. There's an element of the big red button there where instead of just everyone dying though, it's just everyone's kind of dumb and happy. And is that actually better because of the level of suffering on Earth?
Yeah, you and I have had this conversation before about the big red button, and I've often suggested like we should push it. Humans are the most problematic invasive species virus that's on the planet, doing harm to each other, doing harm to animal life, doing harm to the planet. And then I think it was you that came in and said, yeah, well, you take humans off, push the red button for humans, and you still have animals killing each other. You still have at some point a meteor is going to hit planet Earth and cause it to
Not just that, but we're also like the only species that can save a species from going extinct. You know what I mean? No other species, like people think that like humans cause extinction. Like 99% of species before humans even got here also went extinct too. And like, so like the pandas, they only exist because of humans. Like they'd be gone by now. So is there something, even though like we can say that we're worse in some ways, there's also some ways where we have so much more potential. We could create food. We have the potential to somehow genetically or whatever in labs, there's some way that we could create food that could not cause so much harm. And only humans could do that. Or there's ways that we can preserve an ecosystem in ways where like an invasive species could just wipe it out, where we can actually stop it. So that one gets more complex.
Have you ever eaten an Impossible Whopper?
I have not.
Not good.
It's not good.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's not good. I tried veganism for ethical reasons for about 6 months, and I was really sick throughout the whole process. And I eventually just had to give it up and just say like, it's not for me. And luckily I live like where I am in Idaho. There's just a lot of really ethically raised meat where, it's a good argument. I think it's a valid argument that the most unethical vegan is causing more harm to the environment than the most ethical meat eater who can live on one cow for a year. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not a vegan. I made a go of it, but yeah, those Impossible Burgers are not for me.
We had this debate too before, but even the vegan, even the vegan who's just trying their best to do it the best, healthiest, most intentional way possible, has to deal with the fact that microorganisms, insects in the ground, you're causing, just because you're eating plants and not animals doesn't mean you're not hurting life.
Yeah, or the transporting of these plants or the plants is a concern too. Yeah, there's no way to be alive without causing death to conscious creatures, and that does sometimes bother me. It's something I really dislike about the base nature of reality. And when I was struggling with my belief in God, it was just really hard for me to reconcile that God, for whatever reason, chose evolution, which is like the meek die, like the weak die, and that's the same God that gave us the Sermon on the Mount. Like I just couldn't reconcile that.
Yeah. If you, again, get on a rocket ship, scan out to, get out to space, and then look out the window back at Earth and just notice how much this life form called planet Earth. And again, if you look at it like a body, like various species, we can, in our brains, we're like, we make meaning of the world by going like, there's cows and there's alligators and there's humans. But in reality, it's all came out of the same life force. And so you look at planet Earth and it's like a human body, and the giraffes are the red blood cells and the alligators.
I had a mushroom trip like that where like, am I just one cell in this bigger thing? I had a whole mushroom trip about that one time.
And if you look at the planet that way, this is just one life form that, because we're so zoomed in, we see it as, we look at like, we're the white blood cells and we look at the red blood cells and go, look how different they are than us. But if you scan back, all this life form is doing is consuming itself and like birthing other things. So it just eats and spits out and eats and spits out all across the planet. It's sort of crazy that we, this one life form that's on this planet, have this consciousness where we're making this unique meaning out of it. Whereas really no other thing is doing that. It's just eating and birthing itself all over the place.
Yeah. I've had a couple mushroom trips that were in that realm. And then it goes back to this zombie question, because it's like, well, zombies, they're consuming us, and it's like, well, we're all consuming each other. And so like, is it that big of a deal that they're zombies if they're happier. And then we're just back to where we started. But good show, good show. I will definitely watch season 2 when it comes out. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you one question that's to do with a deep discussion. It's just this moment in the show that just annoyed the hell out of me. Carol has caused trauma to the Hive to such a degree so many times that they leave her. They drive away so that she's the only one in her entire city. She still gets to ask them for what she needs. They still take care of her, but they keep, when she calls them to ask for help, she picks up the phone, she calls, it rings, it gets a voicemail. This male voice says, goes through this long message and says at the end, Carol, we still love you, or we still have this, our feelings for you haven't changed, is what they say.
Mm-hmm. We need our space or something.
Space. Yeah, we need some space. Which is such a healthy response.
Mm-hmm.
But why doesn't Carol, on like the 4th phone call, go, I don't want to have to listen to this message every goddamn time?
It did take up showtime too, where we got annoyed.
Yeah, she could have just said on the 4th phone call, just FYI, you don't need to say that message anymore. I get the message loud and clear. I just want to be able to immediately get, the beep and be able to tell you what it is I need.
Yeah. There was a couple times like that where I feel like, hey, if this is a conscious mind that has access to every mind, then there should have been some awareness that would be annoying. But there was a couple times where that happened, where even when she was like switching pronouns, where like she naturally would say we, the hive mind lady. We don't remember any of these people's names, but the hive mind lady, the attractive one that she made out with, she would say like, it's really hard for me to say we, or it's really hard for me to say like I, because it feels like I'm a we. But like if she has access to every mind and every linguist, then they would know that you would probably say I, because it's very disorienting for a human to talk to someone who's using we pronouns for themselves in that way. And you could tell from Carol's body language that that's very unsettling for her. So like, why wouldn't they have access to that information, be able to adjust, So there's a couple times I feel like that happened where it's like, are they really the collective mind of humans? Because I feel like they would have caught something there, or are they something fundamentally different because that didn't feel like a collective human response?
Yeah, I think there are other moments like that too. They all go into a stadium to sleep at night, to conserve energy, to save.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to sit in a tribe of 12 people out in the open air. It's another thing to put, 10,000 people sleeping in sleeping bags next to each other in an enclosed space. There are ways that community is putting their health at risk when a COVID-19 or something worse shows up.
Or even just you would have to override some of our biology, because like if I laid down next to 1,000 people that were getting up and down, like I know that I wouldn't sleep. Like I'm a very light sleeper. So then it would have to be overriding some of our biology, which then are they then different? Are they not really as human as they appear to be? Oh, hopefully questions that we will discuss when we do this for season 2.
Love it.
2 years from now.
We should do it.
All right. The only other movie I'm really looking forward to that I want to see if there's enough maybe themes that are things that you and I could talk about, but I'm really excited for The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan, like a big 3-hour hero's journey kind of epic. And I'm really excited for that movie, but that's kind of on my radar. Is there I'm kind of a show person. There's some times where I'm holding on to life because there's like a new show that I really want to see. Like shows really give me meaning in my life. They are inherently enjoyable to me when I find a new show. Is there something, are you like that? Do you have like shows that you just really like increase your quality of life and really enjoy?
Yeah, and it's sort of strange. Like the shows that I really like are the ones where I have to sit through really thick, heavy drama. You mentioned Breaking Bad earlier. Succession, which to me is the grossest kind of human who just manipulates everything around them for greed. And there's so much family dysfunction in that show that I really enjoyed, like every episode, just sitting in the disgustingness of the worst of human.
Yeah. They did a really good job in like playing with rooting for these people because you're kind of on their side, and then rooting for their downfall, and then going back to rooting for them. And I felt like there was times where they were playing with me in that way because they're horrible people. And then sometimes you have some compassion for them because you see life from their point of view and you still root for them. And then there's some times where I'm like, no, just take a fall. You're such a fucking idiot. But I really liked Shiv. I really liked that they had a female character in this who could be just as nasty as the men. I thought that was great. I love anytime I get a complex female character, I'm on board, just because it still is somewhat rare to get really like nitty gritty complex female characters.
Yeah. In that show, as you point out, there are these moments where you get insights and your judgment just goes away because you're like, oh my God, what a traumatized child that was. What a horrific way to be raised by a father like that. And then you get to the end and the funeral and the talks that are given, the way it was handled. You're just like, wow, this family is exponentially more broken than you could even guess at by watching the show and flashbacks. And
it's not a fantasy in the sense that like a family like this could never like run the world. That's crazy. That's not fantasy.
I think there's a lot of people like that running the world.
Yeah. And more of that's coming out as we go. All right. That's it for me. Any other insights, thoughts?
No, this was fun. And I hope going forward, there is a show on Apple. I watched season 1. I thought season 1 was worthy of conversation. And then I sort of got bored with it, but I can't remember the name of it, but folks will remember this, and maybe you've seen things for it, but it's this guy. And then of course it's the other people he works with, but there's a split between your work self.
Was it Shrinking? Was he like, is it the therapist one with Harrison Ford? No.
All of the people.
Oh, Severance. I love that show. I told people that this show, Pluribus, has filled the void that I've had since Severance because I was obsessed with that show. Okay, go back and watch the rest of the show. It's worth finishing. And maybe we can talk about that one. And then people in the comments, if you enjoyed this is the first time we've done some interviews, Bill and I. This is the first time where we are just talking about a movie or talking about a show. So if you like this, let us know. If you didn't like this, let us know. If there's a show you want us to review or a movie that you would love a conversation on that you feel like is not highlighted enough and you want to have or watch a conversation about, let us know. So yeah, let us know what you would want us to watch, but I definitely would watch the rest of Severance. It's such an interesting show.
I'll do that. And folks, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Again, like Britt said, let us know what you're thinking of these conversations and what you'd like to hear more of.
All right. Thanks, everybody. You've been listening to Britt Hartley of No Nonsense Spirituality.
And Bill Reel from the Almost Awakened podcast.
Together, we explore what it means to grow beyond belief systems and find meaning after deconstruction and outside of religion.
Britt has a master's degree in theology with a focus on the future of American religion, and works as an atheist spiritual director, helping people navigate life beyond faith.
And Bill is a somatic trauma-informed coach and certified leader holding a level 7 diploma in strategic management and leadership. He helps people through faith transitions, deconstruction, and personal growth.
You can find Britt's courses, coaching, and her best-selling book, No Nonsense Spirituality, All the Tools, No Belief Required, at nononsensespirituality.com.
And you can find Bill's coaching, support groups, and podcasts at awakenandthrive.org, resources designed to help you awaken and thrive in the second half of life.
Thanks for listening. Stay curious, stay open, and keep awakening. No nonsense required.